if we grew up in an environment where we needed to be hypervigilant and we needed to scan our surroundings constantly for perceived threats, it also feeds into that people pleaser protector that you might be aware of, you might not be aware of. But if there is that tendency to constantly want to feel like you're responsible for everyone else's emotional state.
Welcome to the Wholesome Healing Collective.
Join us on our podcast for a journey into the hearts of healers from all walks of life, diving deep as we explore meaningful conversations that have the power to inspire, empower, and share life-changing wisdom.
Through this community, we hope to create a welcoming environment where our listeners leave feeling nurtured and uplifted. We are so delighted you are here. My name is Alyssa.
And I'm Renee. Grab a drink, get cozy, and let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Wholesome Healing Collective podcast. Renee and Alyssa here with you, and we have the topic of empaths to talk about, or being empathetic, and it's something that both of us have gone through our journeys with and grown immensely in this area. So we thought we'd share with you some of the things we wish we would have known when we were first starting out our journey, or even before we even realized that we were empathetic. So I hope you like our nuggets to share.
Yeah, I love that. I'd love to start by describing what being an empath is, and how it's a trait, a gift, and a burden, and a blessing, all in one. So for me, being empathetic is as a trait, which is similar to like sympathetic, but more where you tap into the emotions. Like you can put yourself in their shoes and experience what they're feeling. And not everybody can do that. And being an empath is that, plus potentially some trauma from your childhood that made you be on edge all of the time. You had to predict the caregiver or the people around you. You had to predict their behavior so that you could be safe. So that maybe meant that you were extra vigilant in monitoring your surroundings, and that maybe carried over into your adulthood, where again, everywhere you're going, you're feeling everybody else's stuff, or you're being hyper vigilant about your surroundings. Do you want to add on to that?
No, that sounded great. I think what popped into my mind talking about the hypervigilance is that if we grew up in an environment where we needed to be hypervigilant and we needed to scan our surroundings constantly for perceived threats, it also feeds into that people pleaser protector that you might be aware of, you might not be aware of. But if there is that tendency to constantly want to feel like you're responsible for everyone else's emotional state, and it's that blessing of, oh, I can recognize that there is something going on here, but it can be a curse when it feels like it's your responsibility to adjust it, comfort it, change it, do anything about it. So it can be really amazing when we can separate ourselves from everything we're perceiving. And if you're one of those people that's like, what do you mean? Everyone can feel everyone. No, you might not realize that you are special. And a lot of people really can't read other people's emotions. And I would say it's probably twofold, right? Like some people can read it, but they don't necessarily feel it. And then some people can read it and they can feel it. And then some people can't do either, where it's like they don't pick up on people's cues, their emotions that are being expressed doesn't relay to the other person any information, which is so interesting to me. And I feel like I never knew that until recently. And that was an aha moment for me where I'm like, what do you mean you can't just read people?
Yeah, that was eye-opening for me too when I met somebody recently who shared that empathy, being able to read people's energy, and earth sense are all different like skills and gifts. And that you're kind of born that way. So when she said empathy, you're born with empathy, I was like, oh, I thought it was a trauma response. So it was like new information for me, and it made me feel like um that it wasn't all because of my childhood, that like maybe I was naturally gifted that way. And then we're going to share, on some skills to amplify and protect yourself as we go on through this process. But um, there's always so much more to learn. So even when I thought that I'd learned with the empath, and at the beginning I thought I was special. And then I was like, oh, this is a trauma response. And then, oh, like it's just always like learning and diving in. And there's so many different perspectives too. So it kind of depends on who you're listening and what you're taking in, but checking with the body and noticing what feels true for you.
Yeah. And on that note, too, one thing I've noticed in myself is that, especially if someone is in any kind of activated state and they're engaging with me, or even, and not necessarily activation in intense emotions, it could be activation in just like their passion and what they're speaking about. But I notice that I will forget to check in with my own truth and my own energy and will unconsciously mirror that person. And that's something that is a skill, because you can create rapport with someone by intentionally mirroring them to create a sense of comfort and a sense of, okay, this person is like me, or, they're matching me in my openness, whether I'm sitting with arms open or I'm crossing or whatever. But when it's unconscious, it's like a response of, if I'm like you, I'm safer. So I'm unconsciously just going to mirror what you do and match what you're laughing at or what you're sad at or what your expressions are. So that's just something to be aware of that I've
Yeah.
my journey.
I love that you brought that up. And this is totally unrelated, but I just have to share it. So you were talking about the unconscious mirroring. Um, I was at a presentation meeting thing where there was tables and chairs and everybody's like lined up in rows. Does that make sense? And these two people were sitting opposite the aisle from each other, and they were facing this way, so they couldn't see each other. But one of them kept like bobbing their knee up and down, right? And I could see it because I was behind them. And the other one started doing it too. They were like both shaking their knee, I don't know what I'm talking about, tapping their heel.
Yeah.
And they didn't know why they were doing it, but like one would start and then the other would do it, and then the first one would stop and then the second one would stop, and it was so funny. And then a third person started doing it, and so they can't see each other, but they are subconsciously mirroring that behavior. And
Yeah.
I couldn't not think about it and watch it. Like I was so distracted the entire presentation, because once you know those things, you can see them and spot them out. And fascinating.
Yeah, that's so funny that you use that as an example, because I noticed the same thing happen with myself when I was around my brother recently, because I don't normally do that like that. I know exactly what you're talking about, where you just are kind of like releasing energy, or it's like
Yeah.
a nervous. And my brother does that a lot. And I didn't really notice it until I was sitting next to him and I noticed myself doing that. And I was like, where's this energy coming from? And then I look over and he's doing it. And I was like, oh, but that is so interesting.
I love your awareness on that. Yeah. And speaking to the rapport, there's usually going to be one or more people that are like the leader, the subconscious leader. And so if that leader changes their position, you can see multiple people will change their position with that too. So if they're like sitting cross-legged and then they straighten their legs, you'll notice a bunch of people will follow suit if that person was the leader. And so there may be more than one leader that people are following or watching subconsciously, but it's just so fascinating to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's,
when you noticed that nervous tick or whatever was happening, did you do anything to like block that energy to protect yourself?
I didn't really think about his energy per se, but I immediately took a deep breath and tried to ground my energy. And so it was like, okay, I'm feeling that nervousness. So let me see if I can just, well, I stopped the shaking, took a breath, and then like imagined that energy leaving through the ground, um, which helped. But I also noticed myself do it a couple more times throughout the night.
That is so funny.
And then I remembered it actually triggered a memory from when I was younger. I used to do that all the time. And I don't know when I stopped doing that, but it immediately was like, oh yeah, like my body just fell back into that. And yeah, so it's super interesting. I don't know what made me stop over the years, but uh
Mm,
it's funny how I noticed it and then it brought back memories too.
yeah. Curious if it was like space away from your brother, maybe not living with him anymore, that
Yeah.
allowed you to find your own energy and not be, rocking or shaking or whatever it is, heel tapping.
Yeah, yeah. So interesting. And it's
Did you?
something that I think my mom did. So we probably mirrored it as kids unconsciously. And then it just became a habit that I unconsciously broke and my brother didn't.
Mm, wow. My husband does it, but I have to be like, if I see him doing it, I'll just like rest my hand on his knee and be like, "Are you okay?" I don't usually take that on, so that's really nice because I think that would really work me up.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little
Oh.
unsettling. So interesting. Uh, let's see what else feels like what else is a tool that's really been helpful for navigating the world as a sponge of emotions.
Yeah. So and we have two different human designs here. So my my authority is emotional. So I have a defined emotional center and you have an open emotional center,
Oh
but we're
yeah.
both empathetic and can feel and read people's energy. Um, so for me, I think that really retreating back into my own energy and feeling my central channel and what is mine and what's not mine has been a really helpful tool in order to not be like pulled in so many different directions and feel so many different other people's stuff.
Yes, that's a great starting point. One thing that I learned from someone, and I feel bad because I don't remember who it was, but um, when you think about your aura and the energy bubble that is around you, and usually I think of that as like roughly arm's length away. Sometimes we allow ourselves to be very open. We're naturally open as empaths, and that energy field just expands out and out and out and out and out. And then it becomes so encompassing that all that it all that it is surrounds is available to you emotionally. But when you pull it back to your bubble, to the point where you can feel where your energy ends and the rest of the world begins, that is that starting point of being able to say, okay, this is my energy and that's the rest of the world's energy, and I'm going to keep this bubble for me.
Yeah.
And that makes a huge difference, especially if you have a daily practice of bringing that energy back in, because that might be a default setting to encompass everyone. So bringing it back in and starting to recognize what is your energy, because you might not know at first.
Mm-hmm. And choosing when you want to open up and
Mhm.
experience, when you want to be empathetic, when it's safe to do that. Because you don't have to go to Target, you don't have to go to a concert. Being so open where you just experience everybody else's stuff. You can close down and protect yourself. You get to choose.
Yeah. Yeah. And our little bubble can, you can think of it as either being porous and allowing stuff to come through, or you can think of it as being like a glass bubble that's like surrounded in lotion. So everything just slips right off.
Yeah, I love that. Mm. And what is your go-to tool? Unless we already kind of named it here.
Um, well, speaking to the human design and my emotional center, my solar plexus being undefined, um, and it's my only undefined center. So that's where I am most open to outside influence in the environment. And so I really notice when I'm taking on a lot, I feel it in that area. It usually makes me feel really uneasy. I usually will feel indications of stress with my digestion shutting down or just feeling very contracted. So as you explore, you might start to notice where in the body you absorb stuff from the outside world, because it's going to be different for all of us, depending on not just the human design, but just our natural tendencies. So that's nice when you have that awareness of where you're absorbing it, because then you can focus your awareness when you're cleansing your energy on that area. So if I feel like I'm taking in a lot, I will grounding is usually my go-to, especially if I can actually put my feet on the soil. And then I imagine bringing fresh life force energy in with my inhales. And then as I exhale, I'm grounding and I imagine it cleansing that area, especially, and then letting that go out the grounding cord. So that's my main go-to, but there are two other meditation visuals that I've used a lot, and I learned them from Jeffrey Allen. And he talks a lot about our energetic fields as well. And the way he describes stuff getting gunked up in our fields, he describes it as like imagining post-its. So when the outside world is projecting stuff onto us, then the post-its are accumulating on the outside of our bubble. But when we're projecting stuff to the outside world that maybe isn't true or isn't in alignment with us, then that gunk gets stuck on the inside of our bubble. And so we can do meditation practices and visual practices where, we're bringing energy up from the earth and down from the sky. And then as we're letting that energy out, we cleanse the inside. And the inside cleanses all those post-its away and goes down the grounding cord. And then you do another cycle of meditation where you cleanse the outside. And then that clears away your false projections that you've been holding on to, and it clears away the external false projections that have been sent your way and kind of gives you that fresh start.
Wow, that sounds so powerful.
I think
Oh
I'm going
my
to do some
gosh.
meditation on that. I was actually thinking about that for a Monday group.
Ooh, that would be really amazing. Wow. So did you say there was two?
Oh yeah, I meant yeah, cleansing the inside and then cleansing the
Okay.
outside, rather than doing both. And then as you end the meditation, you imagine like fresh light force energy raining down on the inside or on the outside. And then imagine that energy filling all the voids of
Mm,
what you've released. And then that's bringing it back to wholeness.
yeah, I love that. What are your favorite crystals for protection?
Ooh. I tourmaline is the first one that comes to mind.
Yeah,
Um,
black tourmaline.
yeah, black tourmaline. I have a I have a little chunk that I'll hold on to sometimes. But then I have a little one that I'll put in my pocket, and usually I'll do that if I'm like going into a crowd or somewhere where I feel like I need something else to absorb energy besides me. And then one of the practices that I learned in ceremonial facilitation is protecting your energy, um, like points of vulnerability in the body. So they say that your belly button, the back of your neck, and the top of your head can all be points where we might absorb energy that isn't ours. So, especially with ceremonial facilitation, as you have multiple people going through releases and letting energy go, you can protect yourself by using crystals or other things to essentially protect those points of vulnerability. So I actually have a teeny tiny tourmaline that fits in my belly button that I can tape over my belly button.
Wow.
Because they say that for that energy point, it should be black. So you can
Okay.
even use like a black bean, but I think black tourmaline is cooler. Um, and then your third eye point should be covered with red, whether that is a red crystal or even like they say even like red lipstick if you don't
Oh,
have
wow.
like that's your last alternative or whatever. And then there wasn't recommendation on wearing anything for the back of the neck. However, you can use tobacco for cleansing that area if you're in ceremony and you feel like you're bringing stuff on in that energy center. Using tobacco smoke to cleanse that area is what
Wow.
was recommended in the ceremony facilitation. I feel
I
like that
love
was a bit of a tangent. So, long story short, the crystals I like to use are tourmaline, but I also love just using white clear quartz.
mm, as
I
protection.
well, I guess I wouldn't say protection, but I think it's my go-to for cleansing if I do feel like I've taken stuff on, is I like doing cleansing. But I also, when I got my Reiki attunements, each attunement she blessed a certain crystal with that energy, and then she had me hold that as she attuned me. And so I have a crystal for my first attunement and my crystal for my second one, and my first one is a clear quartz. And so for me, I kind of associate that with that light switch of the universe and um that energy of cleansing. So
Wow. That's so beautiful. I love
she
that.
said that her mentor did that for her. She just did one crystal for both with her mentor, but she said that that crystal has now been a part of every single one of her um, classes or attunements that she's passed on over the course of like 20 years. I was like, that is so
Mm,
cool. So she
I
does that for
love that.
us too.
I'm curious what your second attunement crystal was.
It was an amethyst,
Ooh, powerful, both of those.
which I've always been super drawn to amethysts. I have quite a few about.
Yeah, I love that. I love black tourmaline. I have one that sits in between me and my desk, me and my monitor. So
Ooh,
it's
that's
like
a great
between
idea.
me and my client or the group of people I'm facilitating. I have one by my front door too. And I think there's one in the windowsill over there. I'm not sure. And pyrite is my favorite crystal to carry for protection. So it goes in my pocket. And so it's protection and grounding and abundance all in one for me. So I love it. Um, Selenite is when I use when I facilitate, that's like cleansing and just that source energy, that really
Mhm.
divine frequency. And you can use selenite to cleanse other crystals, so it can be really powerful. And I think amethyst is really good for empaths and protection.
Yeah, I do think I remember amethyst being one for um emotion transmuting. Like you can
Wow.
give your emotions to it and it will transmute that energy,
Mm.
if I remember correctly. So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really powerful crystal. It was my like go-to when I first got into crystals, and now as I'm like exploring more and more, I'm drawn to so many of them that it's like I can't carry all of them.
Yeah. I want to double click a little bit into what you were saying with the amethyst at your computer between you and
Oh,
your
the
computer
tourmaline.
because yeah, because I want to touch on merging.
Yeah.
And this is something that we, at least I didn't really have a term for this or language around it until we went through the pause programs, but it's the concept of, um, or I guess it's it's the concept of being an empath. You're feeling that other person, but it's to the degree of you're so in their emotions that it triggers the same emotions in you and you can't help yourself but to cry because they're crying or be angry because they're angry. And it's very hard at times to realize that you can pull yourself back from their emotions and rest in your center so that you can still feel their emotions, but it's not taking over your nervous system.
Yeah, and that was so powerful. When I learned that, I was like, all new, just not before. But the main way you know you're merging with somebody is like you're leaning in and you're just like so encompassed and enveloped in their story or their emotions or whatever they're going through. And so like yeah, coming back into your energy, creating that spaciousness between you and them. And I think that the black tourmaline helps me like just kind of just create that boundary between me and my computer and the client on the computer, and it's so powerful.
Yeah. And if you're a visual person, it might help to actually visualize your energy drawing back to your heart or back to your center. And like Alyssa said, actually drawing yourself back physically helps, and then the mental visualization can help as well. And another thing that I remember learning from Jeffrey Allen is the concept of each one of our energetic centers can essentially reach and expand or contract and recede. So in certain situations, you might want your upper energy centers to be more outwardly reaching towards the person because you want your energy centers to meet theirs.
Mm.
And then vice versa, you might not want your passion or grounding or sensuality to be engaged in that conversation. So you dial those back. And you can think of each one of the energy centers as having a dial outward and a dial inward. And we can control if we want to dial one in. So if I'm having a really intellectual conversation and I don't necessarily want the heartstrings to be involved, I might actively imagine dialing my heart center back to me, but allowing my mental center to still reach to meet theirs. So that's another thing you can play with.
Wow, that sounds so powerful.
It's fun to play with. It's hard to remember to play with it when you're in the moment, especially if you're catching yourself and you're like, oh crap, I'm feeling everything they're feeling and I'm starting to cry. Like, what do I do again? So it's a little easier to practice in situations where, or have a buddy that's maybe empathetic with you, and then start to practice with that in a like non-activated situation.
Yeah. I would definitely love to add that, like, taking the time to prepare before going somewhere or doing something, what no matter what it is, if it's a concert or going out to dinner where there's going to be a lot of people, or you're facilitating, whatever it is, taking 5 to 15 minutes to prepare your energy for that so that you don't have to take on everybody's stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And that could be, going through the mental activities of cleansing your energy. And it might also be dancing and using that to dispel and get rid of, like, shaking off all of the energy you might have taken on to kind of reset yourself, and then bringing that energy bubble around you before you move out.
Yeah, and your intention is your strongest tool here. Just having that intention of I am protected, I am blocked, the intention of having that lotion on the outside of your bubble, like just visualizing and intending that to be there is how that's going to work. And I know that sounds silly because it's so easy, but like that's really where the magic lies.
Yeah. Because essentially, with your conscious intention, you're giving your unconscious a blueprint for how to respond as you move into your more default activities.
Yeah. I love that you brought a little like science in there. A little practicality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
working on that. It's not my strong suit. I'm like,
Mm.
yeah, I know there's science behind this. I'm gonna read it and trust it, and then I'm gonna regurgitate all the fun stuff.
Yeah. Um, I
But,
feel like that is complete for me. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
mm, the one last note that is popping in my mind because we mentioned science is research done at the Heart Math Institute. I'm sure I know there's tons of research, but the Heart Math Institute is one that's really focusing on this. And Joe Dispenza works with the Heart Math Institute, and they partner when he does his retreats. So they're doing all these measurements where they're hooking up to your brain, but your heart as well. And they can, based on your brain activity, they can actually predict when you're entering a altered state of consciousness based on the activity that's lighting up in the brain, which I think is just super cool. And they have instruments that actually can read your heart energy as it extends from your body. So it's completely proven now that we have a energy field that is emitted from our heart that extends out from the body, and this is separate than our just full exterior energy that we're constantly emitting all the time. That heart energy can be activated to extend further or less. And it currently is measured out to up to 8 feet, but that's only because the instruments can only measure it out to 8 feet. So we really don't even know how far our heart energy can reach outside of us, but we know it's at least 8 feet. So
Mm.
that's just really fun to ponder about, because when we are really in our heart energy and we feel it flowing and we feel it radiating from us, and we know that it is going forth before us at least 8 feet, but beyond, how cool is that to send that out with our intention to blaze the way as we go out in our day?
And to have that be like the protection, like your
Yeah.
heart energy is so strong. It's like this shield, and things are just bouncing off of that because Your energy is stronger than whatever they're sending you.
Yeah. And your intention is inviting the energy back into that intention as you go.
Mm, that sounds so amazing.
Ah, energy. So cool.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Okay. So thank you so much for watching us today. We hope you enjoyed some of the ramblings of being an empath and some protection and all of that went along with it. We hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you again next week.
Bye.